This does fire me up, just seeing this is what citizenship is about. So I know we've been talking about, geez, how are we going to write the ship? Well, we're going to write the ship. Don't worry about it. You know, I'm not saying it's not going to be hard, you know, but it's going to work out. And I don't mean that by wishful thinking. I mean that we're going to tear into it, put a little bit of sweat equity and blood equity into the deal, and that's just what we're going to do. And so, so thanks for being here, because that means that you're part of the solution, you're not part of the problem. And so if I had the money, I'd buy all you a beer afterwards, but I guess it's an open bar, right, Kenny? Yeah. Afterwards, all right. So I buy all of you a beer right after this thing, and we're good to go. All right? All right. And I just got to do one point of order, is that just the title, because it does matter. I wasn't a chief of anything. I was a special strategic assistant to Admiral Mullen, which meant that me and one of my best friends, Captain Wayne Porter, got stuck in a corner, and Admiral Mullen wrapped bubble wrap around our heads and protected us, because we were doing some stuff that, as you can imagine, probably wasn't popular in the five-sided puzzle palace that we worked in. So just go figure. All right. And I do want to say this too. If you ever want to, and I was never in the Pentagon before, so I got up there in I guess it was, seems like just yesterday, July of 2009, and I was there for about 2 years. I'd never been at the Pentagon before, never been at that level of anything before, and I just want to say this, Admiral Mullen, and I'm sure this is just my experience, but sitting by one of the grand poobahs of our government, was one of the most decent, most kind, most intellectually curious, and one of the most patient men I've ever been around. And quite frankly, the guy just oozed integrity. And so if you're ever wondering who's sitting there, who's the devious actor sitting up there, I never saw one, because I was hanging around that guy. But he got up every morning to do the right thing. So I don't know if that makes you feel better or not, but that's one Marine's opinion, and that's a Marine's opinion of a sailor. So that probably means something. All right? So take that for what it's worth. So the reason getting up to the Pentagon, that's just a whole other story that's going to take too long. And since, how much time do we get anyways? Oh, outstanding. I'm still not going to tell you that story because it'll take too long. So beer time afterwards. We'll talk about that. Bottom line is I got called up from Special Operations Command, where I was doing strategy for Special Ops. And to work with Wayne Porter, Navy Captain Wayne Porter, who had long time been a made man in the Mullen family, had been on Admiral Mullen's staff for however many years it was, but Wayne, just brilliant guy. And matter of fact, he's at Monterey right now. He's getting his PhD. He's still in the Navy. He's getting at Naval Postgraduate School. But Wayne and I became fast friends. And that was one of the reasons I got pulled up there. It was probably Wayne's idea. And the question that we were asked by Admiral Mullen was, take a look at grand strategy for the nation. Now, I don't know why he's asking the question, other than probably just this general sense that, I don't know, maybe somebody else in the room has, that we just don't have any idea where the hell we're going as a nation. And so I just think it was interesting. He said, hey, these two knuckleheads, a Marine Colonel and a Navy Captain, go sit in the corner and figure it out. So we just said, okay, why not? How hard could it be? So we went off, we sat in a corner, and we had a little office, and that's a whole nother, there's so many other little crazy stories. And I asked me one time about the stinking office that we were in. It was hilarious. Anyways, and you got to ask me. Okay, I'll tell you real quick. Anyway, so there's this office sitting in the Pentagon, and it's right, but I don't know if you guys know, there's always the tank, where they had the big decisions, the tank. And then right the other end of that is the director of the Joint Staff. So it's a three-star, runs the office, and he just kind of manages all the Joint Staff stuff. Well, there's this little two-man office right between it, and there was nobody in there. So it doesn't matter why, we got this office, and we kind of got in there, and so we ordered computers. And the cool thing that we did is, there's supposed to be it was the chairman's new administration transition team, which was before President Obama was elected, so they didn't know who. The chairman had a one-star officer and a Navy captain or something working in there getting ready so they could transition the Joint Staff over to whoever was going to be elected president in the new administration. Well, President Obama's elected. Those two guys left. There's this little two-man office sitting right there on the E-ring, the outer ring of the Pentagon, and so we just took it. And we slapped a little sign on the door that said strategic synchronization, because we thought that was such bullshit, nobody had ever figured out what it was. And so we just slapped it out there, and so there we have this office. And I just would sit in there, and it was like a big cipher lock thing, you had to buzz your way into it and stuff. And it was prime territory. We had a window in the Pentagon. You guys clearly don't know how important that is. I mean, we had a stinking window, you know, and we'd look out over the washing machine, and nobody knew we were there. And so every once in a while, the door would knock, and, you know, so I'd buzz them in. I'd sit right by the door, and I'd see these stars come in, because everyone wanted to have that office. And so, you know, I'd be sitting there, and they'd go, hey, who are you guys? I said, sir, and I still had my little special operations, little zip tie badge, and I said, sir, doing something special for the chairman, can't tell you. He goes, oh, okay, need to know. Anyways, they'd leave. So next thing you know, because we had a sign, we got some computers, and then we were just there, people just thought we were legit. So there's your tax dollars working for you. That has nothing to do with what I'm supposed to be talking about, but I love telling that story. Anyway, so there you have it. So we're supposed to be doing strategy, grand strategy for the nation. Well, you know, we got there, and we were looking out our window, and we go, how are we going to go out doing this? Well, the first thing we decided was we weren't going to write a stinking strategy. And why is that? Because we got plenty of strategies coming out of D.C. We got strategies a go-go. We got so many friggin' strategies, we don't have a strategy. You know, if you want to make yourself legitimate in your little office, crank out a strategy. You know, so we got a national security strategy, we got a national defense strategy, we got a national military strategy, we got a national health security strategy. We got a whole series of strategies about national bike safety. We got strategies, and guess what? They're all a bunch of watered-down wish lists. They're a bunch of paradigm. I mean, they're wrapped around a big paradigm. They're a string of platitudes. They make no prioritization decisions. They're a joke. Hate to break the news to you. All right? The worst thing about them is every single one of them is focused on a threat and risk. Every one of them. About all the bad stuff. That's, you know, bad stuff's going to happen. Keep it away. For the love of God. You know? We weren't going to do that. Because we were far more interested in figuring out not what America's against, we wanted to figure out what America's for. We wanted to talk about us being the land of opportunity. But somewhere along the way, we became the land of threat and risk. Well, I'm here to tell you, we're not the land of threat and risk. We're supposed to be the land of frickin' opportunity. Period. End of story. And oh, by the way, there's a little book written in 1776 by a guy that I think was pretty cool, Thomas Paine. By the way, I always had this idea to create a new political party called the Painters, the Thomas Painters. You know, just why not everyone else? You know, you got Tea Party, Thomas Painters. Anyway, but Thomas Paine, 1776, wrote that little book called Common Sense, right? Very first page, what does he say? He says, the cause of America is in a great measure the cause of mankind. I love that line. The cause of America is in a great measure the cause of mankind. Well, in 1776, he was talking about self-determination. In the 21st century, what are we for? What are we for? Well, I think I'll tell you. All right? Well, Wayne and I sat there and said, well, if we're going to figure this thing out, we weren't going to do strategy the way we were taught. The world doesn't work the way we're taught in the war colleges how to do strategies. End ways means crap, throw it over the transom. It's not worth it. All right? It's deterministic, it's linear. It doesn't address the realities that we face. And I love what Scott, where are you? Talking about you got to come to grips with your reality. Well, that's where Wayne and I started. Because if you look at Abraham Lincoln, one of the probably best strategists we had sitting in the Oval Office, in my opinion, he said, if you could first know where you are and whether you're attending, you can better judge what to do and how to do it. So Wayne and I, sat down with a little bit of what we thought was intellectual and emotional honesty and just took a look wide-eyed at where we are. And right now, we're not trending in any category. We are not trending in a positive way. Now, first of all, I just want to go on record and say I don't believe in this bullshit about America in decline, because we can right the ship. But we got to get off our asses and start working at it, right? But we looked at where we're heading right now in any way you look at it, politically, economically, ecologically, the health of our children, the health of ourselves. We are not trending in a positive direction. It's time to do something about it. All right? And why is that? We felt that was because we are still trapped in this confine, cognitively, organizationally, functionally, in the realm of containment. We never did a big reset. When the wall came tumbling down, we just said, hey, peace dividends. Well, let's just keep doing what we're doing. Well, it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because containment, and I'm a big fan of George Kennan. Love the guy. You should too. Longtime environmentalist, by the way, if you start reading his stuff. But when he was down in the basement of the Moscow embassy, yacked out the long telegram where he framed out the initial ideas of containment, you know, that was a great piece of gear. I mean, for his time and his place, that worked, right? 1946, framed out the concept of containment. And that was a great piece of gear. It ended up becoming the, he wrote his, turned it into an article, The Conduct of Soviet, the Sources of Soviet Conduct. And that framed out conceptually, intellectually, where we're going to go. And oh, by the way, then we came up with the National Security Act 1947, which provided a strategic construct that went along with the strategic concept. And that proved to be a pretty flexible thing over time, because we went from massive retaliation to flexible response to détente, you know? Nuclear Armageddon to a little bit less of an Armageddon to playing kissy face with the Ruskies. Pretty good piece of gear, right? But fortunately, we're still stuck there. It was a control strategy, and it was based on the logic of force and power. Well, maybe back then you could use a closed system approach because of the nature of information. The state system ran information. That's not a nature of our world today. Democratization of information, we truly, and we really were back then living in an open system, but we could synthetically make it a closed system. Today, it does not work. We are trying to impose closed system logic on an open system environment. And it doesn't work, because when you try to do that, guess what? Second law of thermodynamics takes over and you get entropy. And your brain starts rattling around, you can't figure it out. So what do? We do more and more analysis, we apply more and more stuff. We try to fix ourselves by doing what we think we know best. The heuristics of our past are not the heuristics for the future. That's for damn straight sure, right? And so much so, you start seeing things happen like, I call it playing Mr. Potato Head with our government. You know, Department of Homeland Security, yeah, that was, pretty neat. We have everyone pat ourselves on the ass saying, good game on creating that thing, right? Well, it just adds to our freaking paranoia, first of all. Second of all, it's just another bloated bureaucracy that we just don't really need, quite frankly, my opinion only. But I call it playing Mr. Potato Head with our government. What I mean by that is, Mr. Potato Head? You guys know it? Everyone loves Mr. Potato Head. Well, Mr. Potato Head ran out of holes, right? Huh? You're not that young? All right, man. I'm in with you. All right? But Mr. Potato Head ran out of holes, so what do? We break out a drill, we start drilling holes in, and we start putting more stuff on. But now we look like a freak show because we got frickin' feet on our head, eyeballs on our ass. We're looking weird. And that's what we're doing with our government, because we're trying to make an old concept work in a modern context. Well, Wayne and I said that's not what we're going to do. Containment's not working. If it's not containment, then what is it? If it's an open system, what are the laws that we have to address? What is the condition of the environment that we have to exist in? If it's an open system, it sure sounds like it's an ecology. That we have to start thinking in a systems way, the connections of all the things that impact our lives and how we thrive in that environment. And that was a big epiphany for us, to start taking an ecological point of view of a strategic environment. In fact, we started calling it a strategic ecology. And we started thinking about, what does it take to thrive? 5 minutes? Are you kidding me? All right. So we started looking at what was it going to take. I knew I shouldn't have told that office story. All right. What was it going to take to be the best possible organism in that ecology? Now, everyone says Darwinian theory, right? So you're talking about survival of the fittest. Because when everyone found out that in the Pentagon that we were doing grand strategy, everyone was saying, well, who's the threat? Got to have a threat, right? Iran, China. It's like, no, why do you have to have a threat to have a strategy? Don't you just have to have interests? And for us, those interests were prosperity and security. And in an ecology, as an organism in an ecology, to be the best possible organism, the best possible competitor in that ecology, we needed to focus on our internal strength, as well as garnering credibility and influence abroad. Strength at home, credibility, influence abroad. That would make us the best competitor. And I want to point out the word competitor. When you say competitor in the Pentagon, people say, okay, near-peer competitor, China, Iran, right? No. If you do the etymological drill on the word competitor, the root stem comes from the Latin word competare. Does anyone know what competare means? It means to strive together. Strive together. It doesn't mean starting pistol, go trip the guy next to you, kick him in the head, and skip across the finish line. It means to strive together. It's a systems concept. It's a systems concept. In Darwinian theory, yes, survival of the fittest, maybe so, but remember what Darwin talked about. He talked about a spring bed. Remember the spring bed? In that little biosphere, everyone had a role to play. Well, we've got a role to play, and that's what Wayne and I are talking about. But to get there, what would be that concept that would map to our interests of prosperity and security over time in a way that matches our values? When we identified our national values as how they're articulated in the Constitution, particularly in the preamble of the Constitution. The concept that I'm about ready to say a word, and it's going to come from a Marine. We said the idea, the central grand strategic concept The national strategic imperative for the 21st century for the United States needs to be sustainability, period. I didn't know it was such a controversial topic. Agenda 21, anybody a believer? I didn't sign the charter, but what the hell, you know? But sustainability is a grand strategic idea because it maps directly to our enduring national interests of prosperity and security. If you can believe the ecological definition of sustainability, that is an organism's ability to remain diverse and productive over time. Diverse, resilient, depth, redundancy, right? Sounds like security to me. But also productive means growth. But it doesn't mean quantitative growth. All right? We can no longer, as a human race, afford to consume 1.5 planets worth of resources. And from an American point of view, we're consuming 4.5 planets worth of resources. The math doesn't work out. All right? So we have to start thinking in terms of qualitative growth. And I would say that we probably learn of something good or something important from a little country called Bhutan. Gross national happiness seems to probably map to our condition right now, because I'm telling you, I don't think Americans are that happy. Sir, as you said, people know something's wrong. They just can't put their finger on it. So let's figure that out. So for Wayne and I, if sustainability was the grand strategic imperative of the nation, what do we need to do? 3 priorities. Number 1 is education. We've got to start educating our kids to be able to deal with the 21st century reality. And that's not the definition. I mean, we always go down to this weirdo binary choice between is it STEM or is it humanities? Well, that's a bunch of crap. I'll tell you, I think it's got to be the convergence of STEM and humanities. I think David Orr brought that up earlier today. But I'd also throw one more thing in there around that idea of competition is entrepreneurship. We have to start teaching our kids how to be entrepreneurs. That's just not something that's like an epigenetic rule set that we just inherit as Americans. You got to work at that. And right now we are not putting resources toward that end.
What do you mean by STEM?
Science, technology, engineering, and math. All right. The second priority, education number 1. Second priority is national security, but national security more broadly defined. National security is not about defense. It's 28 years in uniform. I'm here to tell you, it's not about defense. Defense is part of it. And I believe in a strong defense. But I also believe in balance. And I also believe balance in thought. There's no amount of bubble wrap we can wrap around every American's head to keep them safe. We are going to get hit again. By the way, we've pretty much guaranteed the fact that we are going to get hit again. 1 minute? We'll stretch that minute out. All right? National security has to be more broadly defined. We have to recognize that national security doesn't start from our shores and go outward. That it has everything to do about the integration of all these systems that constitute our society today. I'm talking about food, water, transportation, energy, the built environment, community, civil liberties. All right? Those are the things that constitute national security. And I'm here to tell you that, you know, we have gone down this mantra. I mean, I thought the guy that wanted to burn the Quran down in Florida was a wingnut. I did. But I still thought he had the right to burn the Quran. Just like I think that the Muslims have a right to build a mosque on ground zero. As long as it's legal, why not? The moment we turn our back on our values, Al-Qaeda wins. The moment we turn our back on our civil liberties, because we're so bunged up by fear and angst, they win. That's what makes them an existential threat, not whether they're going to blow another frickin' bomb off. It's when we turn our backs on our own liberties. That's existential. That's when we change as a nation. That is what the existential threat is. Number 3, priority. Third priority is access to and cultivation of renewable resources. And Wayne and I said it out loud. The age of fossil fuels is over, period. And this is and it's not lost on me the irony that I see a lot of yellow bumper stickers out there with the little thing, we support the troops. Yeah, well, get it off your frickin' SUV. You know, I've been spending my life. And in truth in lending, my wife still has her SUV, and, you know, we're trying to figure it out in our house. And I am not a poster child for sustainability. I'm trying to figure it out, so I know how hard it is, but I mean, we're having that, at least that epiphany in our house, right? But it's not, access to and cultivation of renewable resources. This isn't about fuel and energy. It's also about our soils. Now, I'm a Minnesota guy, and it scares the hell out of me because look at the rate of our topsoil being wasted away. 50% of Iowa's topsoil is gone. It takes 10 calories of petroleum energy to get 1 calorie of food in your belly. Right? How sustainable is that system? We just have to come to grips with it. Oh, by the way, when you got over 34% of your population is clinically obese. We spend $174 billion a year on diabetes treatment. How healthy is that for us? How healthy is that for us? All right? These are just the realities we have to face. So our three priorities, again, education, national security more broadly defined, and access to and cultivation of renewable resources. What Wayne and I were calling for is a new framework, a National Prosperity and Security Act, something to replace the National Security Act of 1947. But that's just the government crap, you know? That's Washington stuff. The importance of Wayne and I, when we wrote a national strategic narrative, I probably should have said that. We just wrote a 12-page document that articulates these ideas. You can look at it. Some citizens actually stood up a website, www.nationalstrategicnarrative.org. Citizens did this because they liked the ideas. I think that's pretty cool. But when Wayne and I wrote this narrative, we didn't write it for DC. Matter of fact, there was a lot of pressure to punch it up, make it policy speak. Well, Wayne and I said, no, we're not going to do that because we weren't writing it for DC. We were writing it for citizens. I personally was writing it for Mom and Dad Mykleby in Wayzata, Minnesota. That's who I wrote it for. Because if Mom and Dad Mykleby, socially moderate, fiscally conservative people, could understand it and it makes sense to them, well, then maybe we're onto something. Because what America needs is a story. We've talking about narratives here. America needs a new story that talks about what we can become and that puts us back into a place of leadership in the world, but not from a position of paternalism, but from a position of partnership, which means that we have to walk the talk. Talk the walk, walk the talk. And that's not a new idea. I mean, first of all, in Beowulf they said behavior that's admired is to pat the power among people everywhere. I mean, I'm Scandinavian, so I'm kind of like that line, right? But it was more even later on, in 1954, George Kennan was already talking about the ideas that people are not going to accept. He wrote this in a book, a little short book called Realities of American Foreign Policy. Fourth chapter of that book, really thin book. It's called The Unifying Factor. I love that title, The Unifying Factor. It's page 112 through 114, longest paragraph you're ever going to read, but what he says is people are not, we know this from personal experience, that people are not likely to follow someone that's lost in their internal development, or I'm sorry, adrift in their internal development, and drifting into bad and dangerous waters. So let's just get it on. Let's figure it out. And that's going to take citizens. Because right now we're getting a nation of residents. We've got a nation of residents that want to just pay their taxes and consider the bill complete. They've got a resident sense of entitlement, instead of a citizen sense of responsibility, and most importantly, destiny. It's going to take citizens. You know who else called that one out? It's General Eisenhower, or President Eisenhower. When you remember the famous farewell speech, 1961, we talked about the military-industrial complex. Well, yeah, that was a big part of his speech. And trust me, that complex is alive and well. It's working just fine. All right? But everyone forgets that he offered the solution. And later on in that speech, he says, only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can ensure the proper meshing of our instruments of defense with our peaceful intentions of people, or words to that effect. An alert and knowledgeable citizenry. Well, today we are neither alert nor are we knowledgeable. We're asleep at the frickin' switch. And as Rousseau said in The Social Contract, the moment a citizen prefers to serve the state with his purse rather than his person, that society is close to collapse. We have got to start challenging our fellow citizens to pony up. You guys are already there. So, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, and this is an easy crowd to talk to, you know. But there's an issue of the public weal. Cicero talked about this, that you have to contribute to the commons. You cannot just continue to draw, and so did Garrett Hardin in 1968, Tragedy of the Commons. It's a basic human theme, and it's going to take citizens with that sense of responsibility to pony up. And, oh, by the way, in our current political framework, I'm blissfully apolitical. I was as a Marine, and I still am now. So I don't subscribe to either side of the aisle. I see no purchase in it. And why? Because it's framed out by ideologies. 0 minutes. Okay, I got it. I'm almost done.
Everybody wants that beer you're going to buy.
Yeah, okay. I'm almost done. I'm sorry, I'm getting amped up. So a citizen, she threw me off my game now. Yeah. But bottom line, it's going to take citizens. But a citizen's got to recognize that the Constitution, it's not the amendments that you get to plug. You don't get to cherry pick from the Constitution. Because as Hubert Humphrey reminds us, the preamble of the Constitution is not only a perennial purpose of this nation and the promise of this nation, but it's also our obligation to it. Because the words in the preamble are action words. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Posterity. It's not like it's an option. We have to start thinking in that regard. Now, I've been called utopian in nature. I was utopian. I was like, geez, is that bad? I mean, I guess so. Right? And my answer to that is damn straight I am. Because else, what else is the point if that's not what we're driving for? And I also just to break down that word for a second. There's two ways you can spell utopia. Topos, place, right? There's OU topos, and there's an EU topos. Well, the OU topos is no place. The EU topos is good place. And as our Navajo friends always remind us, you can't get to a good place in a bad way. We just got to fix our way. That's why I think that sustainability as a grand strategic, national strategic imperative for the 21st century puts us on the right path. It puts us on a path that is not only worthy of our efforts, it demands our efforts if we're going to make it in the 21st century. And this great experiment called America is going to not only survive, but it's going to thrive. Thank you.